Hello there and welcome to this vlog of May 2022. Plans have changed a little bit this week again, unfortunately. So my intention was to record today and to put that video out on Friday and just get, back to the usual schedule. However, I was a bit crazy last week with traveling and I've accepted a new job, which I'm quite surprised about. I wasn't actually looking for a job at the moment, but something very nice came along. So I'll be starting that in June. So I've still got like a month free. But between all that, and again, I'll be traveling from tomorrow as well for a little bit. So I've got a pretty niche window in which to record. And I'm pretty tired as well. So I think I'm just going to do this recording and then go to bed. What I was planning to do, though, is going to be kicked into the long grass a little bit because came home this morning and discovered that there is a bit of not like an informal announcement, if you want to put it that way, and they have released some of the new mech designs, and we now know a lot more about what we'll be getting in Wave 3. So, given that's the hot buzz topic at the moment, and it's a really interesting release as well, news about the release, so I thought it'd be pretty apt to discuss that. So let's get into it, because there's so much information here, and what I prefer to do, rather than just kind of showing a background screen of the picture and the pictures and just showing that, I've actually put it into Excel format just so that we can see exactly what mechs we now know that we are getting. And if we can kind of ascertain anything from that and maybe predict what Catalyst are going to do then over the next 2 or 3 years, I think there are some pointers here. Important to note though, before I do discuss that, this is all my own conjecture and theory, and if you have your own, wonderful, share them with me. I'm interested to know what everybody thinks. Now, one point as well, I'm not actually going to show the photos for several reasons. One, it was just taken off somebody's phone, so the quality's not very good anyway. Two, they're all prototypes. I mean, they're in that orange plastic stuff, so I think they've kind of been done on 3D printers. So, they probably are full of little changes that will happen, and the quality might not be that good, etc. But thirdly, and most importantly, I have no idea if this was an authorized photograph. Now, call me square if you wish, but I work in that kind of environment, and I tend not to show things like that unless I know that it comes from an official source. I'm 95% that everything's kosher. I think it was just one of the artists that published them, so I'm presuming that artist has had the sense to go and ask the top brass at Catalyst if it's okay to share that. But again, it's not official comms from them, so rather than do that, I've kind of gone into the photograph, listed everything that we are getting, and then I've put some notes on the side here that we can just talk through now. So one of the photos, or the biggest photo with the most detail in there, was just a top shot of all these new mechs. Now, I've been through all that, and I think I've identified everything. I think somebody has already done that as well. So there are several places where you'll see that. This was my kind of understanding of what's going on there. I could be wrong, but I think I've figured out what everything is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk through each of these, and I've separated them out into different sections because some of these mechs are clan, some of them are from for instance, we're getting the Aust Series. But we'll deal with the Inner Sphere first, and as you'd expect, the Inner Sphere kind of gets the biggest release because it's the most popular and the biggest area of the BattleTech galaxy as well. So we'll start with the lowest tonnage first. So we're getting the Flea. Flea is great. Oh, actually no, before I do all that, let me just explain to you this table, and now I'll put the notes in this. So the first two are self-explanatory. That's the name of the mech and the tonnage. The creation notes, that's kind of to see if we can ascertain what direction we think Catalyst will go in. Now, I've not put the date of the mech down if it was created in the Star League era or the pre-Star League era or whatever, because that's just standard. What I want to see is where these mechs are coming from in terms of the like when we get post-clan invasion into the Fedcom Civil War, so how many of these mechs sit in that like non-Star League era? So are we going to see like a bit of a catapult now? Not the mech, the catapult, but like a catapulting us into the future so that they can kind of get into the Fedcom Civil War. Do we think they'll go into a different direction from that? Who knows? But maybe we can start to see some little like points of truth when we kind of analyse this data. There's then a notes section as well, so that's just if there's like any other business that I need to discuss, just to remind me in my old age and dotage to talk about stuff. So, the Flea. The Flea is a lovely little mech, 20 tons. The model looks great as well from what I've seen. It's one of those mechs that, like, it's powerful, but it's squishy. So, typical of a light mech, so nice to get. The Hermes 2, which is 30 tons. I'm not a massive fan of the Hermes 2. It's super quick, but I think there are better mechs out there. This will be good news to anyone who plays Free Worlds League. It's very much a mech associated with them. Next up, we have got one of the stars of the show here, which is the Firefly. That's a 30-ton mech, released in 3047, so just prior to the clan invasion. This is one of my favourite light mechs in the game. It's just good at everything. 30 ton as well. I mean, it's good armor, always has decent weapons on there and jump capable, so really happy to see the Firefly. Next up, we've got the mech that I think was like, well, it's one of two mechs that I thought was really missing from the like wave 2. I'm not being spicy or critical about that. I mean, they have their choices to make, and they still released, is it like 93 mechs? So no shade thrown at my side. It's just, I think it was a surprise that this wasn't in there because it's such an important mech as like a scout and a like anti-infantry mech. But that's the Firestarter, 35 ton. Sculpt looks great as well, which is good because the old metal sculpt is a little bit derpy. So nice to see that get a release. Then we kind of come into what I'd probably say is the god-awful section of the mechs. Now, important to note, the sculpts look amazing, especially for the next mech that I'm going to talk about. So this is no reflection on the art. This is just that there is a series of mechs being released here that are just bad mechs. I love that. I love a bad mech. It gives so much colour and interest to the game. So I'm all in favour of that. The first one is the Devastator, 40-ton, absolute heap of junk. Next up is the Assassin, which I've actually listed as god-awful mech, not just awful mech, because I think the Assassin, one thing that really disappoints you about it is it's got a cool name. It looks like a pretty cool mech. It's terrible. It's absolute garbage. Yeah, I mean, field it because it's fun, but it's not an optimal mech. It's really quite dire. One mech sat in between these awful mechs is the Star Slayer. This is a 50-ton mech. Now, I've put on creation notes there that this is kind of a redesign. It is a Star League mech, absolutely. I think there's only one variant of it in the Star League, though. And it's one of those mechs that, obviously, you know, excuse me, and someone who was creating a mechs at the time in the, you know, the 3050s found like the old design blueprint of the Star Slayer and was like, we can do that, but we can now do it better. And that's what you get. Like in and around, I think it's like 3055, they actually design a really, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. They redesigned like a really good variant of the Star Slayer. Really cool looking mech as well. It's absolutely a mech that I always associate with Mech Commander 2. And I love Mech Commander 2, so I'm delighted to see the Star Slayer out there. Next up, we've got the Hoplite, which, again, I think is a garbage mech. Just weird. It's a weird mech. Quick Draw, I've put awful mech. The Quick Draw is functional at 60 ton as well, so it's a heavy, so you get some benefits in terms of like armor and whatnot, but just a bit of a like a letdown of a mech. Not a massive fan of the Quick Draw's like aesthetic design as well. The new mech actually looks quite different, so I probably will like that when I see it. And it's a mech that I really want because it's one of those mechs, it's like when you've got a force on a budget but they want to get a little bit more like hardcore, they'll go for a Quick Draw. Next up, we've got the Caesar. Now, I love the Caesar. I mean, I've written in the notes like it's a Cataphracts turned up to 11. I think that is exactly what it is. It's 3049 mech. It's one of those mechs that it's always quite surprising the year that it came out. It came out obviously just before the clans invaded, but it's one of those mechs that if the Inner Sphere had had enough Caesars, they probably would have like been able to fight the clans a lot more effectively, because it's just a really, really powerful mech. I love it. I love the look of it. I've heard like criticism of it. I think there are some people there that don't like it. I just think it's the like fulfillment of the promise that the Cataphract is. Cataphract obviously a mech from 3025. The Caesar is a mech that they designed to just kind of best it, and I really do think they do that. Next up, we got the Templar, and this is probably the most interesting mech that they've actually released here. 3062 mech, so that date's very, very late as well, you know, in terms of if you're doing post-clan invasion, so that's kind of getting into the Fedcom Civil War. But most importantly, it's the first Inner Sphere Omni that they've released. To my knowledge, anyway, I mean, I'm 99% sure they haven't done an Inner Sphere Omni before. Inner Sphere Omnis are rare. There aren't that many of them. But we're getting it here, so that's awesome. The Templar itself is a completely solid mech as far as I'm aware, and I certainly want them in my forces, so that's great. Next up, so the next box down there, we've got some quad mechs, so mechs with 4 legs. This I love. This is my probably top 3 exciting things on here. The last one you can't see on this screen because I went a little bit like... I kind of embarrassed myself by maybe whooping a little bit when I saw the news on one of the releases. But this I certainly gave a little whoop for. The quad mechs are... I mean, they're all technically Star League designs, but they come back to into the fold after, like, you know, well, after the kind of renaissance of technology and the clan invasion. They get these designs, much like I was saying there with the Star Slayer, and I just love what the quad mechs do in terms of like fulfilling a bit of a niche role in BattleTech. Now, if you look at them, like the loadouts are never very good. Like they don't bring the best weaponry or anything like that, but what's important about them is that they're very, very good over like rough terrain. So in like a universe setting sense, I think they're a really important like mech to have. And they're both very different. Like the Scorpion is a 55-ton mech there, and it's like a very low riding mech to many extents. The Goliath, though, I mean, I've put in the notes there, it's an 80-ton mech, and it looks very much, it's like the BattleTech AT-AT Walker from Star Wars. Very tall, very, like, much better loadout than the Scorpion, but you'd expect that. I mean, it's an 80-ton mech, so it can get better, like, weapons on. I think it's got, just going from memory, I think it's 2 LRM-10s and an ER-PPC, whereas the Scorpion is an ER-PPC, maybe a regular PPC, I can't remember, and an SRM-6. So those weapons don't really complement each other, but the Goliath with those LRM-10s and the PPC variant really do complement. So, great. For me personally, two reasons I'm delighted about this. First, out of all the metal models ever made, I hate the Scorpion the most. It's a disgusting mech. Like whoever designed that needs to check themselves in somewhere for a weekend away, because you can't put the thing together. It's a complete mess. It looks awful. It's like they've put no kind of thought into like how much space it will take up on like tabletop. It's got these like sprawling legs. It's a car crash of a mech. I bought a couple a few months ago, and they just ended up in the bin because I just can't stand them. And why that annoyed me is because one of those Scorpions I was actually going to use in a force which I really like, and it's from like an artist on Twitter who has created a mercenary unit called the Hatchie's Helpers, and one of the mechs that like mercenary unit use is the Scorpion, for the reasons I talked about, is to get over like difficult terrain. And I've painted up like 8 or like 2 lances of the mechs and vehicles that particular mercenary unit use. And I felt like the Scorpion was an omission, but I couldn't barely get this thing together. When I drilled it, pinned it, just kept falling apart. It's just a disaster of a design. So getting the Scorpion in particular is going to be amazing. Really, really happy about that. I'll probably put some in my own mercenary force as well, because it's a mech that I don't have in there, obviously, because the model is trash. I think you can get 3D prints of it, but I actually don't own one 3D print BattleTech model. They're all either from the old metal releases or from the new plastics, and I want to keep it that way as well. I'm really not a fan of, well, it's going to sound a bit harsh. I'm not a fan of giving money to people who are kind of fleecing off IPs like that. It's not a moral thing as such. It's just that I want my money to go back into the official game so that then the custodians of the official game can release bigger and better things for us over the next few years. Personal choice. You obviously do what you want to do. And I think BattleTech's in the past been very open on that. And, they don't strike me as a company that will really harshly go after people. I think there was a couple of cases last year where Topps had to put a stop to some unofficial designs and Catalyst had to enforce that. I remember hearing or reading about that somewhere, but I think left to their own devices, I think Catalyst would just be like, use what you want, but it is what it is. Next up, we got the Aust Series, and I think a lot of people are really excited about this, and that's great. I personally don't care. I've never ever liked the Aust Series. Probably quite a controversial take, 'cause I know they're popular. One thing I did note is we didn't see the Aust War. Are we getting the Aust War? Who knows? The Aust Scout is 35 tons and is very it's fast, and from memory it's got one M laser, so it's just there completely as the name would suggest as a scout. The Ostrock and the Ostsoul are more robust, obviously 60-ton mechs, and they've got better weaponry on there. But not much more I can say about that because I don't particularly like the Aust series, so hey ho. Next up, we got the Clan Mechs. There's some really good ones here actually. We'll go from the bottom first. So we got the Griffin 2C, which is, and we'll deal with both of these together. There's the Griffin 2C and the Shadowhawk 2C, and they're quite unusual in that they're actually clan mechs where they are lighter than their Inner Sphere variant. They're both pretty bad. I mean, I think they are mechs that were created by the clans, before their real technological leap went forward. So they were still kind of using a lot of second line mechs, which I think I want to say every mech there is a second line mech, but I'm not entirely sure about the Viper. I'd probably say yes. I think this is just a series of second line mechs, that they've released. So, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll check afterwards. It'll turn out to be an Omni, and then I'll be annoyed. But whatever. Anyway, those two mechs there. It's like I say, it's at a time in clan history where they weren't creating things like the Warhawk at that time. That's quite a late mech for them. We've then got the Rifleman 2C, which for me is actually the star of the show here. The Rifleman 2C, which is 5 tons heavier than the Rifleman in the Inner Sphere. It rocks 4 L pulses. It's a beast. It's an absolute beautiful mech. When we got the Black Python or the Viper, really interesting mech. Again, this is a late one as well, so from 3051, so right in the midst of the clan invasion, the clans came out with this. What I noted about this is that it's got every pulse weapon on there, so S pulses, M pulses, and L pulses, and each one has got a targeting computer, so very, very strong mech. Phoenix Hawk 2C, which is another bizarre one. I mean, the regular Phoenix Hawk is 45 tons. The clans decided to up it to 80, so it's an assault mech. It has double UAC 10s on there, so yeah, I mean, clans, what can you say? The Kraken, though, the Bane, is the derpiest of derpy mechs, but it's so fun. I mean, I just put in the notes there, 10 UAC 2s. If you are, I mean, that's 20 double tap shots you can do. It's an absolute crit-seeking monster. I mean, I completely think putting 10 UAC 2s on a 100-ton assault mech is overkill of all overkill. As well, I mean, UAC 2 is obviously better than a regular AC, but still, I don't know what niche that particular mech fills or what market it's appealing to. I certainly want one though, just because it's so silly. So great. Now, the next 2 bits of news are the most important to, really. I mean, the first one we're going to deal with here is the most important to the community, really, but the second one's most importantly to me. And that's that they've finally showed us a lot of what is going to be included in the Alpha Strike box. Now, last week when I did a similar video on this when the official release dropped, I said in there it's 30 mechs, so I would have assumed it would be five clan mechs to make up the star, and then 8 Inner Sphere mechs to make up 2 lances. That's not been confirmed, but given what we can see here, I'm like 95% sure that that's the case. So we'll deal with the Inner Sphere first, and we're getting a Locust and a Wasp, both 20 tons. Now, they might be redesigns, in terms of the actual sculpts, but I don't know. You can't really tell from the models that are on there. I guess they won't be. I think they're just going to be using like the standard models that they released previously, because obviously the Locust and the Wasp are both in. The Locust is in the actual Game of Armored Combat, and the Wasp I think was in part of Wave 1, so they're quite early mechs in terms of the the new wave releases that we've been getting from Catalyst. We then have the Blackjack, which is interesting. Blackjack's 45 tons. It looks like the Blackjack 2, which is a 3052 model. That was the Blackjack that was included in the Wolf's Dragoon box set, so that's interesting. It looked like that anyway, but I can't be 100% sure. Next up, we've got the mech that I think everyone's most excited about in this box set, and that's the Wraith, 55 ton, 3055 mech. Looks great, does the Wraith. Very cool, sinister looking mech, and the new sculpt. It's kind of a little bit behind the others, so you can't see it fully, but what I've seen of it looks really good. We've then got an Archer, 70 ton. It looks just like the regular sculpt. The more Archers, the better, because so many people in... so many characters in BattleTech use archers, so it's nice to be able to have those as options for like Jamie Wolf uses an archer, Morgan Kell uses an archer. So you can get those and then apply those mechs to those like key characters. The Atlas then at 100 ton, I'm glad about that. That's one of the poster children of BattleTech. So along when you get the Mad Cat in the Clan Invasion box, I think it was important that they put their one of their poster mechs in this box set. So that's the Atlas, and this is just conjecture from me, but there are 4 mechs that are unannounced, and I'm going to assume that 2 of them are from the Inner Sphere that they haven't even got a prototype for yet. I'd say that's definitely the case, because if it was if it was something that was in Wave 1 or Wave 2, they would have included that because they have the sculpt. So they may have done a redesign on the sculpt, but they've done that already. So I think it's a mystery what we're going to get. Looking at that list, I'd imagine it's going to be an assault and a heavy mech, because remember that the clans are super overpowered. So you're going to have to give the Inner Sphere powers something nice, really. It's not just good enough to have 2 lances. They're going to need mechs that can take a punch and shoot back. That segues me very nicely into the clan section here, because my goodness, can these mechs give a punch. So we saw 3 of them. We got the Warhawk, which is a wonderful mech, one of my favourite clan mechs, 85 ton. It rocks 4 ERPPCs. It's a monster. That Wasp and that Locust will be absolutely eviscerated if that Warhawk gets anywhere near them and can pick up a 7+ or an 8+ to hit with one of those ERPPCs. We got the Pouncer as well, 40 ton. That's one of the new mechs. The Pouncer, I'm just going from memory here, but I think it's like an upgraded version of the Adder. So it's got 2 ERPPCs in each arm. It looks like that mech as well, so that would make sense. It's very atypical of a clan mech in that it runs far too hot, but it's very, very powerful if you use it correctly. Important to note as well that means that there are a minimum, and we don't know what the other 2 mechs are, but there are going to be a minimum of 6 ERPPCs on the table for if you're just picking out of the box here. So that's brutal. And then it looks like we got the Fire Moth. I think it was a Fire Moth anyway. You can kind of tell by those weird arms that's got up in the air. 20 ton mech, super quick. I like the Fire Moth. It's a fun mech, so glad to get that. You can actually get that already, though. It's in one of the, like the Warhawk, they're both in Wave 2. And now for the big news. The news which I've been waiting for since this came out, and it's always amazed me that they've never done it. Let's scroll down. We are getting the Vindicator. I feel vindicated, because the Vindicator is, for me, one of the best mechs in BattleTech, and it's a Capellan mech. Obviously, if you know anything about the Vindicator, you'll know it's like the equivalent of the Capellan Soldier mech. So they've got loads of them. It's really powerful. It's a 45 tonner. It's pretty much like decent at everything. Got a PPC on the arm. It's jump capable. It's got decent armor. You can just field like an army of these and you will win because it's just really good. Love the Vindicator. The new sculpt looks fantastic as well. It is in the beginner box set though, which is slightly interesting. It doesn't annoy me because I'll just go and buy them. I'll just go buy 4 beginner box sets. But the other mech that you get in there is the Griffin, and they've not two things on this. One, it's not in a box set, so you have to spend more money to get just these 2 mechs. And the beginner set's something I'm not interested in, so I won't use anything in there. You know, I don't use the mats. I use 3D terrain. I don't need a basic set of the rules. You know, so there's the only thing I'm basically going to be spending whatever it is, $20 for 2 mechs. One thing though is the Griffin, which is in there, and that was in the original box set as well. I think that Griffin really needs a redesign. It looks far too chunky, and I don't think they've done it. So I would have accepted this if we'd have got a new version of the Griffin that looks like more slim, and then we get the Vindicator with it as well. That would have been a just take my money situation. But like I said, I'm just slightly. I'm not in the slightest bit upset about it, really, but I think it's just slightly, just a little pinch of annoyance that they've put it in the box set if they don't give this, if they don't put the Vindicator in one of the new actual, the regular Inner Sphere box sets that you can get for like $20, where you get 4 mechs then. But for me, see that the mechs that were really that were missed out of Wave 1 and Wave 2 were the Firestarter and the Vindicator. There were others as well, but they were the 2 that I thought, okay, did we really need the Flashman? Lots of people out there will be like, oh, I love the Flashman. Great. I love the Flashman as well. It's like a big egg with guns. It's very fun. But in terms of the lore and in terms of the player base, a hell of a lot more people will want Vindicators than a Flashman. I include myself in that because I like to play with Capellan forces sometimes, so it's good to have them on tabletop. One thing I'd say about it that's mitigated this situation is that the Vindicator, the old metal Vindicator, is actually quite a decent model. So I've got plenty of those, and they kind of fit in nicely. They don't stand out, they don't look too derpy, so that's okay. But obviously this plastic metal model is far better. One final surmising point, and then I'll wrap the video up, is I think this is the most interesting group of mechs that they have designed. It's going to sound contentious that because you're like, well, Wave 2 was amazing. Yes, Wave 2 was amazing, but Wave 2 was kind of all the mechs you'd expect, right? Like the Orion, the Atlas, all the big poster boy mechs at BattleTech. This though is the derpy, forgotten about, kind of rubbish mechs in a lot of the cases here. And I really like that. That's something that gives BattleTech a lot of flavour. And I think that was probably the plan all along, was just okay, if these 2 waves work and people are buying it and we're making money off it and tops are happy, then we'll kind of get more creative with it. So we will do the kind of quad mechs. We will do the derpy, Assassin and the Cicada and whatnot. So I think that's a good way to do it, actually. But I just felt like it's been slightly missing, so I'm really glad to see it happen now. Another important point to make as well, and then I will wrap up, is that there are a lot more light and medium mechs in this selection thus far, and I'm delighted to see that because obviously Wave 2 in particular was very assault and heavy. I can't say that. It's assault and heavy. You know what I mean? There was lots of mechs over 60 tons basically, which is great. We all love those mechs. But I felt like if you wanted to force create correctly, you would need a lot more medium mechs in there than you can actually get from Wave 2. So you'd want to see a lot more Centurions and Hunchbacks and Trebuchets. So if you're building kind of forces where you want a bit of colour or do a bit of narrative, it's way more fun to have an Assassin, a Cicada, don't know about a Hoplite. They're just not very good in general. They're on that verge between they're not derpy. They've got a cool name. The mech looks okay, but it's just doesn't run very well. Whereas like the Assassin is just so bad it's funny. The Crusader is so bad it's funny. The Quick Draw wants to be much better than it is, but it's not. It's just not a very good mech. So like I say, I consider the Hoplite. The Hoplite is like, there's like if you watch bad movies, I watch a lot of bad movies on purpose. I get entertainment from watching terrible movies. If you go in and you're watching a genuinely bad movie that's just genuinely awful, that's kind of the Hoplite. Whereas there are those like standout terrible films which are so bad that they're fantastic, and that's kind of what for me like the Crusader and the Assassin and the Quick Draw are. So yeah, adds a lot more colour. So that's it really. This is all great. I think they're going to probably start trickling this news out. I'm going to try and not have that dominate the channel. So when my schedule kind of calms down, I will get back to doing the regular like lore and like tabletop analysis and whatnot on BattleTech. And what I'll try and do is if they do release news out, again, this week and last week have been an exception because I've been very busy, but I'll do an extra episode in a week. So I might release one on like a Tuesday evening or whatever, and then I'll still have the Friday as a regular. But again, this week, slightly chaotic. Anyway, check those photos out. You can find them on Twitter. They're everywhere. They'll give it another 24 hours. They'll be, absolutely everywhere. So I'm sure you'll see them. Again, keep in mind that they are prototypes. So if there's something you don't like on there, that will probably get flagged when they're analysing the prototype. One thing I did know, and that I need to kind of bring up here as an extra, is that they are bringing out vehicles as well. I've purposely not talked about vehicles because I think it needs to be separated slightly, because I don't know what they're doing with it. Like there were like 6 or 7, maybe 8 vehicles that they'd like taken a photograph of, but I don't know if that's like the tip of the iceberg and we're going to get like 20 more, or if it's going to be built around vehicles and that's just kind of the first bit. With the mechs, we kind of can see what pattern they're going in now. They're going into that like post-clan invasion era. They've obviously got a mixed box set now with Alpha Strike, so that's interesting. But the vehicles, it's still very like, it's in the dark for me. I can also tell as well, like they have the Warrior helicopter, so they're releasing a VTOL, which is great to see. But it wasn't on a stand. Usually you get those like little transparent stands you can glue them to. Oh, well, they come pre-assembled, don't they? So presumably will be on there already. And I kind of looked at that and thought, that's something that's not final product. They'd also put it on the base incorrectly, so it wasn't on the hex side, it was on like the hex point in which direction it was facing in. So I'm going to leave vehicles. There may be, like in the next month, we might get a lot more data on that, and then I'll do a specific video on that. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you again next time.